Storehouse Media Group. Sherrie, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest today.
I'm doing fine, thank you, Neil. And I am very excited. Today we have Rivera Douthit of the great state of North Carolina. And, I met Rivera. We spent a weekend together, part of it. And, she was super impressive. And she's an author. And, she's got a few other things going on. I just want to bring her on and let her talk to people about it.
Oh,
Welcome, Rivera.
thank you, Sherrie. It's so good to see you again.
It's great to see you too. Just to give a little background more, you are from the great state of North Carolina,
Yes.
and you are a lover of Jesus. You are a mom. You're an author, an evangelist, and interesting. You recently ran for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, and we'll get into that.
Mhm.
But you've written two books. You've written a children's book, right,
Mhm.
called Lily in the Garden of Wonders, and
Yes.
you've written Intimacy and Zero Gravity. And we had talked about this and what prompted you to write a book. And so, let's share with the listeners and viewers, like, what is it that caused you and to actually you had the thought, but what caused you to actually put those thoughts into action and write those books?
Well, I think I've shared with you before that at least try to be radically obedient when the Lord asks me to do anything. So that's led me on all kinds of adventures in my lifetime. But writing books was one of those things. I don't consider myself, uh, a great writer necessarily. I mean, I know that I can write, but um, I really consider myself more of a storyteller or a communicator. I communicate messages, and the Lord wanted me to write these books, I think, to communicate messages of hope, messages of seeing God, what it looks like to walk with God, what it looks like to hear from God, and encourage people in their intimacy and in their walk with the Lord. So that's why I wrote them.
Oh, wow. And you were confident because God kind of spoke to you to write, right? In a way.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating, really, that a lot of Christians don't even think that God can speak to them. And the Bible's clear about that. He says, my sheep will know my voice. And people don't realize that our imaginations and our thoughts that we have sometimes are from the Holy Spirit. It's not always just something internal in us, but it's actually something God has downloaded in us to hear from Him. And we're different. People are hardwired different ways to hear from God in different ways. And it's always fun and fascinating to help people on the journey of hearing the Lord's voice.
For sure. And and that's a really good topic, really good point to bring up. When you think about, God created us for relationship. He
Hmm.
wanted relationship.
Yeah.
So you and I, we're friends. How could we have a relationship if you only spoke and I didn't? If I
Right.
never spoke back to you? I mean, relationships are two ways. And so God does speak to us,
Mhm.
and we just need to be open to hear him and what he has to say.
Yeah. And I do think that is probably like, we get caught up in worldly things. A lot of us are very, very ambitious, very driven, want to be successful in the world's eyes. And, we could have conversations over what does that look like? What is true success and all that. But at the very end of the day, I find it most important and most fascinating to hear from God, know that I'm hearing clearly from Him. And then what do I do with that? And following the Lord, because we know that if He's telling us to do something and we do it, then we're going to always be in His will and we're always going to be safe. His plans for us are good. He has good thoughts about us, good plans for us. And the way to stay in the good plans of God is to be in His will and to be doing what He's asking us to do. And I find that the most important thing in life, really.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's the process. So from that, how challenging was it for you to write a book once you said, I'm going to write one?
Oh, Very challenging, but I'm a person who didn't cower from challenge. I mean, obviously, if I ran for office, writing a book was maybe even preparation for some of the harder things I've done. But at the time, it was like my first book was written, I want to say 12 or 13 years ago. So honestly, that was, again, another act of obedience. The Lord had me start a blog. Blogs were kind of more popular back then, maybe than they even are now. But and it was a trend, and the Lord said, start this blog. And I said, no one even knows who I am. Why would I start a blog on it, But I did it out of obedience. I started writing stories of seeing God and what it was like to walk with God. And a lot of the stories from blogging and from being obedient in those small acts of obedience became some of the stories that I put in my intimacy book when I wrote that. But, I found that self-publishing and all the things that followed the writing were more challenging for me really than the writing itself. So, and I think that's where a lot of people get hung up is, how am I going to publish this book, or what does this look like? How do I find an editor? And that's where Sherrie comes in. So that's pretty cool.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I am really interested in your books, and I know you've got so many more in you still, like it or not. I think you do. But you mentioned about the running for office. So you're like I said, you're an evangelist. You were a critical care nurse.
Yeah.
You have a lot of things on your CV, and then you ran for lieutenant governor of
I know.
North Carolina. So, I find that interesting. And so, please share why and what, coming from people like me who've never run for a political office, what was that like? Almost being the anomaly in the midst of this group of people behind the room, behind the doors, scenes and stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Well, again, the Lord asked me to run. I would never have stepped into that arena not having a confirmation from the Holy Spirit to do so. And because when he confirms something, he's got your back. He's going to help you through everything that you need to do what you're heading in to do. So that was part of it. But it was interesting, it was challenging. There were my eyes were open in a lot of ways, but I did it primarily as a mom and just being passionate. One, for North Carolina. I love North Carolina, but people would say, well, why wouldn't you run for mayor or some, smaller, more local office rather than jumping right into something like lieutenant governor or statewide position, having never been in politics. And quite frankly, just because God was specific with me and I went with what he said. I saw it in dreams. I had multiple confirmations. So that was why specifically, but getting into it, then it was a lot of work. I traveled every day for probably 8 months campaigning. I was out with the people. I was at, every parade and every town function and everything you can imagine. I mean, it was wild. I was raising money for the campaign. Obviously, you can't do very well and get very far without raising money for advertisements and signs and all the things that you have to have. So it was a lot of work, and it wasn't something that I really anticipated. And then the politics end of it was so challenging at times because, politics is politics. And that's why I'd always said, Lord, I don't want to run for office. What in the world are you asking me to do this for? Because I'm not a politician. I like to steer away from that. I hate politics. And he said, Rivera, I'm not asking you to do politics, but I'm asking you to put yourself out there to govern. If you get put in a position, I'm going to have you govern, and I'm going to have you govern from heaven. And these are the types of leaders that I knew we needed in position. We need integrous authentic people that are just real people who are from the state or from the area and who really genuinely love the state, love the people, want what's best for the children. I was running on things like let's get the pornographic books out of the libraries in the schools. Let's teach the children the basics of education and get all this propaganda out of the schools. I'm a pro-life woman pretty unapologetically. So I was talking about that and have a very clear and effective communicating where that is concerned, because, we don't talk a lot about the aftermath of those types of things. And so I was able to talk from a woman's perspective on some of those issues. And so it was fascinating. I interviewed on lots of radio programs, answered a lot of difficult questions that people had, and really found myself actually pretty natural at it once I was in it. Debates, all kinds of things. I ran against, there were 11 of us running for lieutenant governor. So obviously did not win the primary, but was an invaluable experience, and had thousands of people vote for me that I've probably never met. I'm not sure that I ever will meet a lot of them, but it was a great experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Wow, what did that teach you after the aftermath of that? Where you would go now after you were able to raise money and do all those things?
Yeah. Well, it taught me that I can do hard things. It taught me that if the Lord asked me to do it again, I would say yes. There were things that I would do differently. There's approaches that I would take. I mean, I think I have more of an idea of how the whole thing works now, and certain contacts that I made, I would reach out to early on to start getting behind me early on in the game. And, I didn't have all that going in the first time because I didn't know all those people across the state. But now I've met people all across the state. I've been involved in endeavors since then. We had the hurricane that came through Western North Carolina and devastated Western North Carolina. And I got somewhat involved in that afterwards. So, just being involved with the people, boots on the ground, people have seen that. They see my heart. They see that, I've been in ministry and ministering to women and children and, people across the globe for years because of, I have a heart for people, and it's a genuine thing. And I want what's best for North Carolina and for the people and really for the United States. I mean, I have a heart for the governmental mountain and for those who are in seats of office to be integrous people of God that are honoring, the country and honoring other folks with integrity and honesty. We just want honest people running offices. we just need good people in office, and that's I think I can bring that to the table for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, because that, as you're talking, I'm thinking, wow, that's such good training ground. So it'd be interesting to see what the Lord does with that,
Yeah,
so
it certainly was training ground for something. I don't know, but we'll see if he has me do it again or if he just decides to. I'm open to whatever he wants. Of course, I have the medical training and background. You mentioned I was a critical care nurse, so I have that. And one of the questions was, have you ever led a legislative meeting, and how will you do that as lieutenant governor? And I said, I have not, but I have a feeling if I can be a critical care nurse and, do what it takes to save people's lives in a critical situation, I'm pretty sure I can surround myself with people and learn quickly how to run a legislative meeting. So, I mean, it was interesting, some of the questions that would come up out of intimidation or whatever. You've never done this. How will you do this? And it's like, I don't think I know everything, but I know how to surround myself with people who do. And So I think just wisdom, the wisdom of heaven is what we need in office. It's not politicians that we need in office. We need the wisdom of heaven and people willing to hear again the voice of God and follow what the Holy Spirit is saying.
So what is new? What is newest things with you? Your book, kind of go into that. What's new?
Yeah. So right now, I'm really spending time on myself. I find myself in a challenging time in my life. So personally, and I won't go into to a lot of the details about that, but when you find yourself in challenging times, oftentimes it's a time to reflect. It's a time to really focus on yourself and how the Lord wants to speak to you in this time. I've been doing a lot of detoxing. I've been doing a lot of researching. I've been doing a lot of soul searching. Just so I find myself in what I would call the middle right now, and I don't have specific answers for what my next big step will be. There's no big announcement here, but during this time, I did write Lily and the Garden of Wonders. It was kind of a fun book. I find it necessary, even when find yourself in the middle or you're transitioning from one season to another, to find a way to still be creative. And that was the reason I wrote Lily and the Garden of Wonders, is because I wanted to create something that reflected parts of my childhood and my life that would benefit children who read it and kind of get them excited. And it's a very colorful, playful book of a little girl and her grandmother gardening. And they simply talk about seeds and growth and new life. And they talk about it in the context of creation and God creating things and talking to God and things like that. So it's a fun little book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Some really interesting things, Sherrie. Go ahead.
Are your books on Amazon?
They are. Yeah. I was going to show them to just because I have copies here. So this is Lily in the Garden of Wonders. It's a hardback. So, but it's really a very colorful, kind of fun. There's like big pictures in it, and then there's other like Lily and her grandma and things like that. Her chicken. I had chickens, and I live in the country, and I had chickens, and so that I incorporated my little pet chickens into the book, and so it was kind of fun writing that. And zero gravity is like life in the spirit, what it looks like to like get above the noise and the just the entanglements and the stress of the world and really like walk in the spirit. And what it's kind of a front door approach to the church of just what it looks like to operate in the spirit and the gifts of the spirit and things like that. So that's what that one was. That was my second book. And I kind of like the cliff, the guy sitting on the cliff overlooking this big valley, and he's, we're seated in heavenly places. So that's the whole concept of the book. And then Intimacy was my first book, and it's stories about, it's a very simple cover, and but it's just stories about intimacy with the Lord and what it looks like to walk intimately with God. And I think that he wants that for all of us. So I just love encouraging people in that, because I don't know, it seems very foundational to me to how to live life successfully is to be intimate with the Lord. So
some great stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's your centerpiece. And, explain where you're at now with your personal life. And as you were talking about zero gravity, I'm like, wow, that's where you're at now. It sounds like,
Yeah, I'm in a place with him where I'm just allowing him to do whatever he wants to do in me. And it truly is kind of a preparation ground again, in a different kind of way. You find yourself in a wilderness season or however you want to look at it. And, Song of Solomon talks about, and that's one of the most intimacy books in the Bible, Song of Solomon, the beloved, and his love. And so, but she comes out of the wilderness leaning on her beloved. And I think there's something so beautiful about wilderness seasons, because
Right.
in that place, it's where we find a way to lean on our beloved even more and get even closer, and look into the eyes of Jesus and allow him to do the work in us. So I just, trying to embrace this season of being in the middle and allowing him to work on me so that I'm ready for this next. Because I do believe, and I think that it's an overall thing, a word for the church, so to speak, is that we are exiting a season or an era, and we're entering into something entirely new. And I think everybody can feel that shift. And that's happening in my life personally. And, it's also happening corporately. So how are we embracing that? And for me, it's just really, really allowing God to do the inner work that he needs to do for me to enter into the next. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Sherrie, kind of thoughts from, learning about someone that took a shot like that, right? To run for lieutenant governor.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's that does take a special person, but God knew you could handle it. So there he goes. I'm just really I'm excited and
Mhm.
really interested on what's gonna happen from there.
Mhm.
Because when he has us do things, and at the time it'd be like, huh? But
Mhm.
it's never like in vain. There's always a purpose.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
I had so many sweet people reach out to me the day after the primary election, and one was a senator's wife that I've known for several years. She is a godly woman, and she said, Rivera, she had a word for me that she felt the Lord was wanting her to give me, and but then she was just encouraging, and she said, I want you to know that your yes to the Lord to do this, it changed the landscape of politics in North Carolina, because she said, I heard people on that campaign trail talking about Jesus that I didn't even know were Christians. But she said, you just being present, doing what you do, bringing Jesus into every room you entered. She said, you're an evangelist. You're not a politician. And you took that into politics. And she said that shifted North Carolina. And she said, you'll never know the impact of your yes. And so things like that are very encouraging and keep you wanting to say yes, because whether the outcome is what you hoped it would be or what you thought it would be, it's still the outcome of heaven when we say yes to the Lord. So I just encourage
I
people to
love that.
do
That's a
that.
great way of putting it. That's
Mhm.
the outcome. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that's right. So you're an evangelist. You speak. You go around, travel, and you speak at
Yeah, yeah.
events. So just want
Uh,
to put that out there.
Yes, I've spoken in lots of women's conferences and things like that. I love helping to do inner healing work, and all kinds of things with women. And the furthest I've ever been is across the world. I did conferences and pastors' meetings and crusades in Pakistan. I was there for 3 weeks,
Oh, wow.
um,
wow.
and saw many miracles, saw many Muslims there come to know the Lord as their Savior.
Mm.
And I got to witness blind eyes opening and deaf ears opening.
Wow. It's
Um,
terrible to see what's happened in Pakistan, how they're persecuting Christians, especially
yes.
killing. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then there's hostility between India and Pakistan now, and all these rumors of wars and uprisings and things like that happening there at the border. And so
Wow.
definitely I'm in prayer for that. It's my prayer that those countries will, India's a Hindu country primarily, and then we have Pakistan as a Muslim country primarily. And my prayer has been since I was there that it would, one day be a 98% Christian country and a 2% Muslim country, but we'll see. God can do that miracle. And
Absolutely. There's an orphanage that one of my clients is helping out, and it's
Mhm.
tremendous mission they're doing in Pakistan. Definitely have to connect you for that.
Yeah, sure. I actually went to an orphanage while I was there. I had helped get some of the children into the orphanage and out of the brick kiln factories. There's a lot of slavery in Pakistan, and there's families and children stuck in slavery, building, putting bricks together. Some children there in slavery have never played like a normal child. They've just been in slavery working their whole life. So I helped get some of those out and into a good orphanage there. But I would love to, I'm always open to meeting people all over the world and making connections. So
Fantastic.
I
All
would
right,
love
great.
that.
I definitely have to have you on the Mike Velarde show where you can talk about that, and then maybe he'll connect you specifically.
Yeah, sure.
I'll definitely look into that. Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. All right, best place we can find info on you. Where can we go?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, in this transition, my website is down. For years, I've had riveradouthit.com. It is down right now, so I can't give you that. But you can find me on socials at Rivera Douthit. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. You can email me at riveradouthit@gmail.com. And I have Rivera4NC.com is still up. If you want to just dig around on that website, you can see a little about the campaign and listen to videos and things
Awesome.
from the campaign. But yeah.
All right, fantastic. Thanks
All right.
again. Appreciate
Thank
it.
Thank
And
you,
go to
Erin. So
Storehouse
good
Media
seeing
Group,
you again.
and make sure you go to storehousemediagroup.com and check out all the different things that Sherrie's doing.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys. All right, that was a
Thank
special
you.
simulcast.